So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry. My name is Shazia Khan, and today's session is on learning outcome 2, and we'll be looking at effective communication in health and social care. So what I want to do before we go into learning outcome 2, can you all see these slides? Yeah?
Yeah,
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Um, so what I'm going to just do, give you an overview of what we went through in the last session. So you've got an idea of what we covered yesterday. So we looked at learning outcome 1 yesterday, and we looked at understanding the different communication approaches. Does anyone remember what we did in yesterday's session? What kind of things we looked at?
we're looking at communication. How important is communication?
Yeah.
So, the
What
patient,
what what kind of communication did we look at?
we're looking at effective communication.
Yes. Did we look at different types of communication?
Yes,
Yeah, okay. And why we looked at also why people communicate the way they do. So things like, they can obtain information, give information. We also looked at elements of, effective communication, and we looked at the person-centered approach. We also looked at briefly on verbal and non-verbal and written communication, which we're going to expand on today more. We also looked at the person-centered communication. We looked at technological communication. We also looked at things like group communication and why that's so important in regards to therapy groups and team meetings. We went on to look at the importance of communication in health and social care, making sure that we're ensuring any sort of safety for anyone and any sort of misunderstanding or lack of information. It's really important that we promote this person-centered care, make sure that the person is valued, but also that person is able to, cater and tailor everything around their individual needs and concerns, and take into account their feelings as well, because that's so important in a person-centered care. We also looked at elements of reducing conflict and supporting continuity of care. So whenever there's a handover, we need to make sure that it's done properly, and also ensuring elements of privacy and confidentiality. Today we'll be looking at a little bit more on expanding on certain parts of that. So we're looking at learning outcome 2, which is to understand the communication needs and preferences of individuals. Why do individuals have different communication needs? Why do you think that's the case?
I think they communication differently.
Yeah. Not everyone's the same, is it? So everyone communicates differently. So we'll be looking at elements of that. We'll also be looking at elements of, why people communicate differently. So we look at how to determine an individual's communication, so the indicative content, preferences, assessment, agreement, approaches used when promoting effective communication. So again, we'll look more at, the different types of communication. We look at different forms of communication where they use aids as well, and we look at different services and resources that provide an effective communication, like therapy and support groups and things like that. So what are communication needs and preferences of individuals? So it's really important to understand the communication needs and preferences of every individual. Everyone has different, needs, and everyone understands things differently. We don't understand the same. So, we're here to provide information and access it in the form of what that person needs. For example, if that person has special needs, we need to provide sensory needs, or simple language, and avoid using that jargon. So if they've got any sort of disabilities, mental health, we need to be taking that into account. Also, elements of person-centered, we need to be looking at how they prefer to be communicated to, making sure the individual is being listened to and understood. We also established this communication method by choosing the right one for the individual and looking at the person-centered care and considering different various styles. Also, we look at paying attention to individuals' body language. and how they adapt their communication to match their needs, because not everyone is the same. So, some people may be quite reserved and quite timid, so they won't express themselves like other people. And that impacts on their communication because they don't want to say anything then. So we look at things like that, how we need to speak slowly and use, simple jargon language, avoid using any medical terms. Do people get confused if we start using medical terms?
Yes, they do, because they
Yeah.
don't know what we're talking about, and
Yeah.
knowledge.
Give me an example of somewhere where you've been in your workplace where you felt like this person doesn't understand.
We try our best to make sure they understand.
Yes.
We listen to what they need and make sure that we pass the message so they
But
understand.
have there been any Nadij, have there been any incidents where you feel like you've not got through to the person?
Yes, because if they don't understand me, that's I can make mistake, or that if I
Yes.
want to understand, they won't take it differently.
And for them reasons, you need to make sure you are providing information that is accessible to them in plain language. Because, if they struggle to understand, you need to make sure your language is clear, you're speaking slowly, especially if you're working with elderly people. It's one of them things where you've got to make sure, that you speak slowly, even if it's, at home with elderly people. I used to remember speaking to my father, but it was difficult for him to understand certain concepts. But for me, I was talking too fast for him. So it's really important that you look at making that, making it clear and making sure they understand. So effective communication is the process of like translating information and messages to an audience. So it could be to anyone. It could be health and social care workers. And it's really, really important that you have these listening techniques, because, active listening is one of the important things, because you're providing feedback and you're making sure that you understand what they are telling you properly. You will need to make sure that, you are communicating their needs, because, if you listen to the person, are they going to feel empowered?
Yes, they're gonna feel like you
Yes.
respect, pay them attention.
Yes. And you are paying them attention, you're understanding, their emotions or their perspective, and you're building this trust, aren't you? So the person will empower, the person will open up more to you if you build this trust with that individual. So we've got a video here which is communicating, speaking to people with a learning disability. So let me just open this video. Maybe I can't open it because, no, I'll tell you what, I can't do this. Is right, okay, so I need to minimize that. I need to stop sharing that. Sorry, I just need to make sure that the video, if I'm sharing it, if it's come up. Right, see if I can share volume. So can you see this, everyone? It's a video on communicating to people with different special needs, yeah?
Yes.
Can you hear
This
me?
short film is about communication. Having a
Yeah. Yeah.
You can
It's
hear it,
okay.
excellent, thank you.
communication need may include not being able to express yourself, not understanding information that is said to you, not understanding information that you read. We all know that bad communication is the main reason for problems, errors, and distress. Volunteer champions Carol, Stuart, and Ian will tell you more.
People communicate in different ways and use different methods. Communication is about how we relate to others. It does not have to be seen as complicated. The message we give other people need to be understood by the person who needs to understood them.
Good communication is really important. One of the biggest challenges faced by people who have a learning disability is making themselves understood or understanding others. Ray Birdwhistle was a behavioural psychologist. He was one of the first people to study body communication in the 1940s. His studies found that 20% of communication is verbal, 80% of communication is non-verbal, words are 7% helpful or effective, tone of voice is 38% helpful or effective, non-verbal clues are 55% helpful or effective.
Some people cannot say what they think or feel. Some people cannot talk. This does not mean they do not think or feel.
Times are changing. Family carers are often more educated and informed now. This needs to be respected. Even if the person who has a learning disability is in some form of care, family carers should be included in discussions and their knowledge of the person should be listened to.
It is important that managers and people running services do not just assume that they know what families and carers think. If the person is not able to make decisions, the managers and people running services should arrange best interest meetings. It is critical that GPs are involved in these meetings.
Many GPs will have known the person during their younger years. A lot of information and knowledge gets lost when the person becomes 18 or an adult.
GP or primary care is a lifetime service. They need to make sure everyone remembers that good communications is so important in help people to have good health.
Some people harm or hurt themselves. This can be a way of saying they are unhappy or confused. Everyone's life has a value. It is wrong to judge the value of life because it is complicated or costs money. We should all remember MedCap's report called Death by Indifference.
So you can see from that video that, people learn differently, don't they? Not everyone learns the same. And, we need to make sure that as individuals, we learn to understand different people. So do we have to work in a different way with people with disabilities?
I don't think that should be a priority, because
Okay.
when you talk to them differently, they feel like these people normally get get treated differently. So we
Yeah.
don't want them to feel type of way. We have to make sure we treat everybody equal.
Yes. Yeah. And you have to make sure that you learn, take on board what their needs are as well, and make sure that you cater for them. So now we're going to look at theories of effective communication. The main theories we're going to look at is linear models, interactive models, and transactional models. And these are really important in ways of exchanging and getting feedback between the sender and the receiver as well. So the first one we're going to look at is the linear model, and this is also called action or transaction model. And this model describes communication in one way, single direction process, where a sender transmits a message to a receiver without providing any sort of immediate feedback. And this is it's a one-way flow, and the receiver does not provide immediate feedback. And the model is straightforward, and it's a simplistic model representation of the communication process. So it's quite a simple model, and it's used quite often is this model. And key components include things like a sender, a message, a channel, and a receiver. And these are examples of television, radio, and print advertisements, etc. So the advantage is it's simple kind of way to use this model. The next one's the interactive model. And these are the interactive models are where the sender sends a message to a receiver who interprets that message and gives feedback. Gives feedback, which is crucial role in the exchange. Unlike the linear model, this models incorporate the idea of interaction. It could be physically or psychological. And key examples here are the one that they've mentioned is the communication cycle, which was developed by Charles Berner and then revised by Michael Agel in 1972. And that diagram shows you the element of when someone decides to communicate with someone else. Other interactive models is the Screm model in 1954. And this is a two-way circular model that describes communication as a continuous process of encoding and decoding messages where the sender and the receiver exchange roles. So this is where the messages and the exchange, they are where the receiver and the sender receives exchange roles here. Transactional model is another model that looks at communication, and it's something that depicts communication as a dynamic, ongoing and stimulus process, which is an ongoing process. And it's participants that are involved in this is both the sender and the receiver, who continuously influence each other through continuous feedback and message exchange. Unlike the linear model, this model highlights shapes communication and the participants co-meeting build relationships. So all these models are different, and they have their advantages and disadvantages as well. Other models you can look at would be Barnlund's model 1970 and Julia's transactional model 2004. You can explore different models of through further sources, and we've got here the communication process 2003. Isn't a specific model but it refers to fundamental steps of effective communication, where it has a cycle that looks at the process of developing communication between the sender and the receiver. And the links there, if you want to have a look at the communication process and where you can get the link from. So if you go onto there, think about a recent situation where you maybe communicated with someone. Okay, so all of you, think about a situation where you've communicated with someone. Analyze your communication by applying the 7 C's, and the 7 C's are correct, clear, concise, concrete, considered, complete, and courteous. Okay, has anyone struggled or situation where you've communicated with someone and whether the communication was effective or not, whether they understood your communication? So you would use this kind of element of it. Nancy, have you communicated with someone where you think you've used the 7 C's? So clear, concise, control, that you've got your message across to them, or were they able to understand? Was your message clear? Was it correct?
Yeah, I think I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I did. We have this one of my patients where I
Yeah.
work. He can't talk properly, so even us to understand is difficult. But even
Yeah.
when you are explaining to the person, you need to make sure the person understands what you're saying as
Yeah.
well. So you have
So
to use all the sorts of different kind of communicating to
yeah.
him. And you make sure the person understands. And when he
Yes,
understands, you can see his reaction, or he's happy, he understood what you
yes.
said.
So if you look at the 7 C's, you make sure the message is correct. Yeah. You
Yeah.
make sure the message is clear,
Yeah, yeah,
is concise, is considered, is concrete, is complete, and is courteous. You need to make sure you are courteous when you're giving these messages out.
yeah.
You need to make sure that, communication is with respecting the individual's views and their feelings as well.
Yeah, everything. You just need to use everything because you need to make sure, because he reached the point where he wants something and he's pointing at it, but he can't say it
Yeah.
properly.
Oh,
So you end up like
yeah.
you have to go there in the table, you touch the thing, you lift it up. No, it's not that
Oh,
one. You go and get another one. So
it's
you just end
difficult.
up, yeah, it is. It
It's
is.
difficult in that
Yeah.
situation. Yeah. So looking at 2.1, the next slide is the importance of determining the individual's communication needs. And so unless you find out anyone's needs, it's crucial for building. You can't say, oh, this person communicates like this. You need to make sure that you find out what their communication needs and preferences are, to make sure
Yeah.
that you build this trust, you build this promoting well-being and ensuring that effective communication. Because depending on the individual, it's hard for them to communicate, especially like you're saying, if they've got hearing loss or if they can't talk.
Yeah.
By you understanding as a caregiver, you need to be able to, understand what their communication techniques are, how they like to communicate.
Yeah. Mm.
And if you have people, the example they've given, if you have people with dementia, you need to adjust everything to their needs.
Yeah.
You need to make sure that, you observe them, find out about them, make sure that you adjust your communication around their needs.
Yeah, it is difficult. And you find yourself going back to the care plan to remind yourself what
Yes,
that
yes,
person needs.
yes. It's
Yeah,
hard, isn't it? It's sometimes a very hard situation.
it is.
Yes. So there are different ways you can assess individuals' needs and preferences. You can directly ask the individual, how they prefer to be communicated to. If they've got
Yeah,
hearing loss, if they want lip reading, if they have difficulty communicating in a different language, you can provide them interpreter. You know,
yeah,
you observe the individual. Make sure you observe how the individual interacts with others. Pay attention to how they communicate with others and how they like to be communicated to. Make sure you can observe their body language. Make sure you are able to observe that individual. Also, ask other people. You can ask their family and friends, can't you? You
yeah, you
can ask
can.
them.
Yeah,
Speak to the family and friends, any carers. Speak to, anyone that's working with them or, looking after them, to show, they may give you an insight of how the person prefers to be communicated to, and how if the person, the different changes in their life, how they prefer to be communicated. Again, like you said, reading the individual care plan, you have to refer
yeah,
back to that. Make sure you are, that's a good source of information in communicating, making sure that, you're communicating well to them and making sure you're assessing their needs. So you have to compile this into information, get it all together and make sure it's appropriate for that individual.
yeah,
It's hard though, it's very hard sometimes. So 2.2, compare and contrast the approaches when promoting effective communication. And we've looked at some of these approaches earlier. So the first one is looking at verbal communication. We've got written communication, non-verbal communication, the use of advocates, interpreters, communication aids, and sign language or Makiton. And we're going to go through each one. So the first one is verbal communication, and this is the use of spoken or written words to share information, ideas. Okay, it can be your vocabulary, it can be your tone of voice. It encompasses both oral and face-to-face conversations. And strong verbal communication are really important for building this element of trust. Avoid using any vocabulary that's slang, that they don't understand. Your tone of voice. Why is your tone of voice so important?
Yeah, because some
It
of
is.
them they really don't like when you shout. They don't like the
Yes,
shouting kind
yes,
of talking. So you need to find out that person maybe need a calming voice. So you
yes.
need to be
Sometimes,
lowering the voice when
sometimes
you
it's
are
very difficult,
talking.
Nancy. You know, when you've got a loud voice like mine,
Yeah.
it's very, very hard. People think you're shouting at them, but you're not
Yeah, they do.
shouting.
Yeah.
You
Or
know,
they think you're talking too fast. They
yes,
can't. So you
yes.
need to lower your voice and you need to be calm about the talking and all that. And
But
sometimes it's even difficult for
it's
us
very
because
difficult, Nancy,
you don't
because
know how you don't know other way to talk and then you end
yes,
up talking loud and that person
yes,
is
it's
can't
very, very
hear. So
difficult.
yeah,
I find it very difficult because I teach in in a college, but I teach students, a huge amount of students, and when I'm talking to them, I'm shouting, and it's not really me shouting, it's just how
yeah,
I am.
they think you are. Some of them
Yes,
they might think you
yes,
are
yeah. They
shouting, but
do
you're
get
not.
upset. Najid
Yeah.
and Latifa, what do you think about the tone of your language? Or Amy, why do you think it's so important? Does it upset some people?
Um, yes, I think it's upset them because some of them the body language is matter sometimes they say.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
because they might feel like you're impatient, you don't have just because they have disability, you don't
yes,
wanna work
yes.
with them or you tired with them. So that's why sometimes
That's
it's
what
good
we're going
to
on
keep.
now. We're going on to the pitch of your voice. You know, you respond if someone's got trouble hearing, you know, very high or very low. Your volume needs to be to the individual's needs. Like we said, Nancy, you know, some people like high volume because they can't hear, but some people don't like the acoustics in the room, you know, so they
Yeah.
can't hear. And then listening. This is really important part of that. You're actively paying attention to the individual. You're understanding what they're saying is a crucial part of verbal communication. You're building that, fostering that kind of connection and help them building that trust with them. So be prepared to repeat what you've said in your person does not understand you the first time. You know, it's really important, especially if you have to lip read and stuff. You know, you need to support every learner, every individual, especially within health and social care. The next one is active listening, and you know, we're going to look at the solar model, which was developed by Gerard Egan, so a psychologist. And active listening, like we said, is where you're fully focused on that individual, understanding the complete message and including non-verbal and verbal cues and planning your response. The solar model is where they sit squarely. The S is for sitting squarely, O is for open posture, L is for leaning towards the other person and making them feel that you're interested in them. E is for eye contact, which is really important and shows that you are taking on board the other person's feeling. And having R is for relaxing. Make sure you've got a relaxed persona so that the person is able to understand. And this kind of model builds a rapport between you and the individual, a connection, and also making sure that you are able to speak freely and make sure they understand and increases an engagement with you and the individual. So it's really important to take on board this kind of solar model when you're talking to someone. Written communication, again, is really important, especially in health and social care, is where you're conveying information using written words, using emails, letters, memos. It could be the care plans. Why is written communication so important in health and social care? Do you think you need to look at written communication all the time to refer to it? When you're looking at someone's care plan, that's a written communication, isn't it? That
Yeah,
you
yes,
are
it is.
referring to that all the time and making sure that you are on top of things. It's important to have written communication because you need to write everything down. Sometimes words are difficult, and where communications, you need to be able to write things down so you remember things, and writing things down can be useful if someone's unable to talk or anything.
Yeah.
non-verbal communication, and I think this is the best one for me, to be honest. It's important when you're communicating, where you have your facial expressions and you're sending information without using words. So it could be your language, it could be your facial expression, it could be your eye contact, it could be gestures, it could be the tone of your voice. It might be that you're bored and you're sitting there rolling your eyes. Is that a positive or negative message?
Very negative message.
So very
Very
negative
negative
one.
message, yeah. If you sat there folding your arms, is that a positive or negative message?
Mm.
Sometimes people portray that as a negative message.
Yeah, they do. They understand differently sometimes
Yes,
because I remember one of the patient when I was so tired. I
yeah,
do night shift, so I was so tired. So I went
yeah,
there. I was doing the supper time, so I went carrying a cup of tea. So I said, "Oh, there is your cup of tea." And then I on it was the lady was like, "Oh, you look tired, darling." I said,
yeah,
"Yes, I'm very tired."
yeah,
So like the person understood like I was
yes,
tired. So
yes,
from my body language, he was tired.
yeah.
But I
It's
had to make sure the person doesn't feel
yes,
she's the
yes,
one who making me tired and all
yes,
that. So I had to be friendly and all that.
yeah.
It was,
Body
yeah,
language is really important because, sometimes being too close to someone or, having, smiling can show feelings of
yeah,
concern, using eye contact. People take it differently and different cultures take it differently. Some people
yes,
feel
yes.
defensive, some people feel nervous, sometimes when your face, portrays happiness or sadness or anger. Like the video we showed that yesterday, that woman when she was given the newspaper,
Oh,
her
yeah. Oh.
her persona was her body language wasn't good, was it?
No, it
No,
wasn't. And the woman understood the whole body language,
yes.
how
You know,
rude she was.
yes,
Yeah,
and sometimes keeping that but keeping that that proximity between each other. Some people don't like too much intimacy. They don't like to be too close to someone. And
mm,
the direction, I mean, I've had it. I've been teaching for 18 years, and throughout my 18 years I've had everything, the body language, where students haven't uh done the work. I see myself rolling my eyes as well.
oh, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
and then I look at them from this kind of, why haven't you done it, as in a teaching kind of eye contact. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's a way of me saying I'm angry because you haven't done the work. So, in that kind of instance, it's okay because you're portraying your image across to someone who's not done what you've expected them to do.
Yeah, and they understood you're not happy as well of what they have
Yes.
done.
No, I'm not happy all the time. So yeah. So happiness and sadness and fear is and it's really important that you take into account people's cultural interpretation of certain things. Like people don't like to, within certain communities, they don't like to shake hands. They don't like to hug. They don't have eye contact. They think of it as something else. So it's really important you take into account, you know, people's culture, people's, expectations and things. So body language is important. It's very important in any sort of communication. It's just that how you use body language and your mannerisms and how you support someone with your body language. You can have flexible body language to adapt to the individual's communication, but you can also offend people as well, and you won't know that you've offended someone. So, your body language, you need to be really careful when it comes to body language. And now with the impact of COVID, it had a huge impact on body language, don't you think? Because people don't like to touch each other.
Oh, yes, it was so funny.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's had a huge impact on it. Touching, as we mentioned, touching again is one of the things that people don't like doing. Some people feel uncomfortable with it, and especially after COVID. And if a health and social care profession, touching someone's arm may, alert to it. Patting someone's hand and compassion. Certain gestures people don't like. I feel uncomfortable because I have long COVID, so I don't like people that have, are sneezing in front of me or have got because I'll end up, the only reason is I'll end up getting a cold quite quick because of my immune system. So that,
Yeah.
yeah, so inappropriate touching or uncomfortable, can lead to other things. So, you need to be really careful, and you don't want to offend people as well, because people can get offended.
Yeah, they can. They just
Yes,
because
if
sometimes you can
someone's
forget yourself.
yes, if someone's quite religious, I'll give you an example, and you want to shake their hand, they won't take that lightly. They don't. Some religious people within probably the Muslim community will not take that lightly. They will think that a handshake or something is not good.
Yeah.
So you've got to respect everyone's culture, and we're going to look at culture a little bit in more details in a bit. Gestures, so for example, you might point to an object where someone is waving and indicating, or such as drinking, or asking someone. Your behavior is not is another non-verbal communicator. You often say you're happy, sad, angry. Your behavior impacts on individuals. If they have challenging behavior, you could get maybe a bit annoyed at them, but you need to make sure that that when it comes to anyone's behavior, is so important, body language, because you're impacting on someone's cultural. You don't want to be offending, you don't want to be misunderstanding. For example, direct eye contact within Western cultures is normal, but in certain Asian and Middle Eastern cultures, it's a rude signal.
It is. Yeah.
Yes. And thumbs up is a rude signal in countries like Nigeria and Iran. If you get your
Yeah.
thumbs up in certain countries like Nigeria and Iran, it's quite rude. It's a rude signal.
Mm, yeah.
So you've got to take cultures into account, and I think it's really important. In like certain cultures, like Western cultures, it's okay. It's a sign of confidence, is eye contact. But like we said, in Middle East, it's disrespectful. Physical touch, handshakes in Western culture is polite, but in Middle Eastern culture is regarded as offensive. So another one in okay, a sign which is a thumb, is accepted in some places but seen as obscene gestures in places like Brazil and Malta. And the way you sit, if you sit cross-legged, it can be seen as disrespectful in China, in Japan, sorry, Japan, that's the country. Showing the soles of your feet towards someone is offensive in Middle East. Smiling is generally an expression of your warm welcome and friendliness, but in Japan and certain cultures, smiling can indicate embarrassment, discomfort, or even mental illness. So the different cultures have different things. So respecting and being aware of everyone's cultures and adjusting your body language to them individuals' culture would help them. So it's quite interesting that different cultures have that kind of stuff, isn't it?
It is.
And you grow up like that. If you're from a different culture, you grow up different. You grow up, taking on board your cultural, what you've been taught, by your parents. Culturally, it's right for you. For me, culturally, things like, I tend to shake hands, but my sisters won't shake hands. But that's because it's their culture. So
Yeah.
the use of interpreters or advocates, they're really important for translating, spoken words between languages. And an advocate is an independent representative to ensure that, an individual's needs and wishes are understood and heard, particularly if they have difficulty in expressing themselves. And, having an interpreter is really important, especially when taking issues like language barriers into consideration. There's people with different language barriers that you have to take into account, or someone is disabled and has issues with speech. They're not able to convey the message across. So you need to maintain professionalism and maintain that, get that message across. Communication aids. Why are communication aids so important? Amy, why do you think communication aids are so important? Amy, no? Mugaranis? Anyone? Why do you think communication aids are important? Nadej? Like you have communication aids, don't you, for certain types of people? You have symbols, you have pictures, you have communication types, charts, braille, you have speaking aids. Why are they so important within health and social care? Who needs them?
For some people,
Yeah.
it's hard for them to speak,
Yes.
even though they understand their message.
Yeah.
But when you show them pictures or even you wrote down, they can read. And
Yes.
some of them, they will wrote back what the answer is.
Yes.
If it's image like symbols and
Yes.
everything,
Yeah.
they point and you get the message, what they
Yes.
meant.
Yes. It's like a child, isn't it, Mugarazi? You know, where you've got a child, where you tell him, where's the cat? Where's the dog? Where's the car? And you show them pictures. Some people visually need to convey information like that.
Yeah.
You know, some people do pointing as well, you know, symbol selection, eye movements. You know, they have electronic devices. You know, people have, you know, assigning, like we said, Braille is used for blind people. And, you know, within the healthcare professional, you need to provide resources in Braille as well, which is raised dots. You know, symbols are really important. Books, symbols, letters, signing, you know, making sure that signing is really important, like Makaton and stuff. Speaking aids, what people need to speak into electronic devices, so they convert the speaking into text for them. You know, that's really important, you know, and making sure that the electronic devices are designed specifically for that person if they've got any sort of impaired speech or anything. You know, you need to design that for that individual. You know, electronic devices are have various methods. You know, they have people, you know, from who people like who are autistic or learning disabilities, conditions with cerebral palsy, people that have speech problems need these kind of additional support. And, you know, conditions like neurodegenerative conditions like motor neuron disease. You know, speech therapy is really important for them so that they're able to, you know, provide the resources for them. So we've got sign language on Makaton. And our British Sign Language is the UK primarily individuals for people that are deaf and having a hearing impairment. And the naturally evolved language, which is its own grammar, primary language of the deaf community, and then it spells out and represents each letter for that individual, so that individual can use BSL to help them. And it's a natural established language for deaf community, is used primarily language, and it's they don't follow the grammatical rules of spoken English. They use signs, facial expressions, body language, and a naturally evolving language. It's quite historical, this, and it's used quite a lot. Makaton is a simplified communication program that combines BSL speech and symbols to support people with learning or communication difficulties. And Makaton signs are used with the spoken English word, whereas BSL has its own distinct grammar. So Makaton is used by both hearing people and those who are non-verbal to support communication. So like you said, they use symbols, they use spoken language, and it's followed by the same grammatical order as English. And the whole point of Makaton is to support speech and language skills and help people communicate effectively, because, you know, some people can't communicate due to their it may be any sort of learning communication difficulties, or even young children that have been, you know, can't communicate. There is a link there that you can look at in your own time on how Makaton works, and it's really interesting. So have a look at that link. You just download it into your web page and you can have a look at that. Describe services and resources access to promote effective communication. So services and resources to promote effective include things like, you know, face-to-face professional support, It may be resources. So this goes through verbal, face-to-face, which we've looked at, the advantages and disadvantages, when to use it. So it looks at most people, have verbal communication, and when to use this as well, disadvantages and advantages. We then went on to look at written communication and how it could be planned in advance, and also non-verbal communication, interpreters, advantages and disadvantages, advocates, communication charts and books, PECS, which is the picture exchange system, and how it's used and how it's developed. So it's most useful for simple communication, symbols and pictures, which we looked at, and speaking aids. So this is just identifying all with advantages and disadvantages and what they'll use. Sign language, we looked at, a Makaton. So now we're going to look at 2.4, which is services and resources to promote effective communication. So, professional include professional coaching. It could be mentoring. It could be elements of, we have interpreters and, advocates. They are there to help translate any sort of information or, any sort of languages. And, the NHS provides interpreters and advocates to help people communicate on behalf of the individuals, and also to translators is to bridge any sort of gap with anyone that has any sort of language barriers, and ensures that messages have gone through clearly. And you can link on that to get that. It's on the NHS website, england.nhs.uk, which has an advocacy people, which is a charity that provides any sort of advocacy services for individuals to communicate on behalf of them. You have communication books and boards. So you have an example is the National Organisation Autistic, which gives information to support people, and books. And then you have the communication passports as well, which provides templates. You have picture exchange communication, which is PECS. And that could be found on pecs@uk.com, which is, and then speaking aids you can look at, which gives you information about speaking aids and why they're so important for people within health and social care setting, and why it's needed for them. And then Makaton as well is there as well, that you could look at, which is a Makaton charity at makaton.org that looks at elements of that. In addition to these, you have speech and language therapists. Why are speech and language therapists so important? What do they
And I
help
think
individuals do?
it helps individual have, confidence on them. And then the
Yes.
practice is very important for them, because life is a stress. You can't just go jump and do
Yes.
things you
If
have
they
to
have
do.
issues with school, it might be children where they've got speech therapists that they need language. If they're not able to talk, they are referred by their GP, and the language therapist is used for that. Audiologist is people related to hearing problems, and they can identify that through the GP. And the support groups and networks. So there's lots of support groups out there. For example, you've got people, that need help with baby sign language or Makaton, Alzheimer's support groups, people support groups for cancer, for the blind. Why are these support groups so important for these individuals? Is it good for an individual to attend the support groups? What do you think? Anyone? Nadej, why do you think it's important for individuals that maybe have suffer from Alzheimer's or dementia to attend these support groups?
I
Yeah,
think because you can go.
It's okay.
yeah, it helps them to get back to their speech, to their confidence, the
Yes.
way they used to be.
Do you think other people are there as well that are similar to these people?
Yeah, they
Yes.
might be kind of different people who suffered from different,
Yes.
yeah, or they suffered from the same thing, same
Yeah.
illness,
Yeah.
yeah. So having them there together helps them, like in confidence way, to know they are not alone. Like,
Yes. It's so
yeah.
important that. Nadej, what were you saying? Sorry. Nadej?
Uh, I think I pass.
Support groups. We were talking about support groups and why they were so
Yes,
important.
yes. I think when it's come to support group, the same people, like people with cancer, they go to the same
Yes,
group. They
yes.
exchange ideas, or if I have
It
something
can
I can,
help them. It can help them feel, a bit confident. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Yeah.
because sometimes they feel like they not in the journey by themselves.
Yes, yes.
Somebody have the same
Yeah. So
problem. So
yes, it's really important to attend sport groups, to help it. And then information on the internet. Some information is good, some information, is not good on the internet because, it's not all, you get all sorts of communication problems on the internet as well. So in this section, we looked at the importance of assessing individuals' needs, how to look at communication needs, and references to supporting effective communication and resources. So these are some of the links that we've used. So I'm just going to give you an overview of what we've been through today. So we looked at learning outcome 2, which was to understand the communication needs and preferences of individuals. We looked at elements of how to determine communication needs. We looked at approaches to communication, verbal, written, non-verbal, formal, advocate, interpreter, the use of aids, adaptations, British Sign Language, Makaton. We also looked at services to promote effective communication and why speech and language therapist supports are quite important. So, this is the links here to learning outcome 2. So you can just right click on these and open these links. Has anyone got any questions before we finish off the session? So some of the ebooks are available. And journals and any sort of articles are available on Moodle for you that you need to go on to, and that's the main resources. This is some further reading. So there was one with communicating with people with learning disability, and 3 must-have communication skills for health and social care. The links are there. Have a read of them in your own time because they're quite interesting of how to learn about communication with people with learning disabilities as well. Any questions or any sort of queries you've got, email learnerwork@ukvarsity.co.uk. The recording for Learning Outcome 1, which was yesterday and today, will be up on tomorrow for you on Moodle. And then the next Learning Outcome is Learning Outcome 3, which we'll be looking at next week, the final learning outcome. And then we'll be, which is to look at barriers to communication, and then we will be doing the assignment discussion. So has anyone got any questions before we finish off the session?
well,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Anyone got any questions?
no, ma'am.
No? Okay. Thank you for attending today's session, and I will see you in tomorrow's session. Oh no, next week's session, sorry.
Next week. Oh my goodness, you are supposed to.
Not tomorrow, next week. Have a nice
Okay.
week, everyone.
All right, you too.
Take
Thank
care.
you so
Bye.
much. Yeah, yeah,
Bye.
thank you. Bye,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.